I get a ton of questions on this YouTube channel about how to consider portion sizes for the Mediterranean diet. And this question is so common because there are plenty of resources out there telling us what foods we should eat and which ones to avoid, but a lot less information about how much of each food we should consider eating. So by the end of this video, you're going to be able to answer: what is a portion size? What are the general portion recommendations for a healthy Mediterranean diet approach? And what are the factors that you need to consider in order to determine what a healthy portion is for you at your individual meal? Hey there, I'm Dr. Anna. I'm a medical doctor. I was trained in Italy, and on this channel, you are gonna learn how to master your health. Okay, let's start. So in order to think about proper portion sizes, we first need to consider that a portion is simply the amount of food that you eat at a single time. So whether that's a full meal or a snack, that is your portion for that type of a meal. So this is a really individual thing. In fact, it's not actually quantified with any specific numbers. In other words, the portion that you eat is the amount of food you need to eat in order to get full or to know when to stop eating. And it is possible that your ideal portion of a food or of a meal is dramatically different than a portion that you're served in a restaurant, for example. We know that over time, especially from 5 or 6 decades ago until now, in the United States, portions have absolutely exploded. They've exploded for the size of the plates that we're served on. They've exploded in terms of the size of drinks that we are finding in convenience stores or gas stations or grocery stores. In every way, shape, or form, portions have gone way up. Now, in order to think about this properly, we need to separate in our minds this concept of a portion and a serving size. So while I mentioned that there is no specific quantity that is given to us as the right portion, there's no specific numbers associated, there are recommended serving sizes for individual foods that are often described by a government's dietary guidelines. And most governments in the world have these guidelines laid out, usually on their government websites. These are things that can be looked up. So since I'm in the United States, the US Dietary Guidelines for Americans breaks down the recommended serving sizes for a general healthy balanced diet according to the US Dietary Guidelines. And our USDA defines portions and serving sizes as the following. A portion is how much food you choose to eat at one time, whether that's in a restaurant or from a package or in your own kitchen. And they say that a portion is 100% under your control. They also note many foods that come as a single portion actually contain multiple servings. So then what is a serving? Well, a serving size is the amount of food that is listed on a product's nutrition facts label. All of the nutrition values that you will see on a nutrition facts label, it says, are for serving size that the manufacturer suggests on the package. Now, in order to determine what information is put on a nutrition label, a lot of research is done on general healthy diets, and all of those recommendations are generally based off of nutritional guidelines. It's not that they're just random numbers that companies are deciding, but in fact, these are regular, standardized serving suggestions. But enough of that theoretical talk. What does this look like practically? So when it comes to serving sizes, this is always explained by individual food groups. So one food group has a specific serving for that type of food, and a different food group might have a different standard serving size. Let me explain what I mean. So for leafy vegetables like lettuce, kale, spinach, the general serving size quantity amount is about 1 cup of that leafy green. Instead, for a cooked vegetable, something like zucchini, eggplant, corn, or peas, this might be a 1/2 cup as a serving size. Now, a way you can think about this in terms of general measurements is that a baked potato, for example, 1 serving of that might be the size of a baseball, or depending on the size of your hand, a size of a closed fist. Now, for proteins, like lean proteins such as chicken or turkey, or even cuts of fish, a serving size is considered 3 ounces. Well, what does 3 ounces look like? This is generally thought of as about the size of a deck of cards, or again, depending on the size of your hand, the size of the palm of your hand. So if you're in a restaurant and you're visualizing the food that's served to you, and you get, for example, a piece of salmon, and you don't actually know how many ounces that is, you might be able to see that it looks like about the size of 2 decks of cards. Well, you could generally guess you're getting about about 6 ounces of fish. Now, how about for fatty foods? Well, when it comes to butter or margarine, the concept is that it should be about the size of a stamp for an envelope, as about 1 serving of a fat. And this corresponds to about a teaspoon of that food. Now, the US dietary guidelines also include this definition. They say that a serving of fat-free or a low-fat cheese, like a mozzarella cheese, is about the size of a pair of dice. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't remember the last time I even saw a pair of dice. So that's not an easy one for me to quantify. Not to mention, I don't eat fat-free cheese. If I'm going to enjoy cheese, I'm probably going to go for the full fat amount, but you have to decide what's right for you. Now, we're here to talk about the Mediterranean diet and what a portion of healthy Mediterranean eating might look like. So when it comes to dietary guidelines to follow the Mediterranean diet, this is generally classified by 2 different groupings. We have foods that we should consider eating daily and foods that we consider eating weekly, on a weekly basis. And what that means is those foods are not necessarily eaten every single day, but a few times a week. So let's go over the foods that should be included daily as part of a healthy Mediterranean approach to eating. So first, we have extra virgin olive oil. Now, this is a food that is often considered a daily or a staple food of the Mediterranean diet. The recommended amount is about 1 to 4 tablespoons of olive oil per day. So that's in terms of the serving sizes. But what about portions? How much should you eat at an actual meal? So it just depends on what you like to eat in your diet overall to decide how much olive oil you eat at which meal. So let's break this down. For example, let's say you like to have a salad for lunch and you're going to use olive oil as the bulk component of your salad dressing. But let's say you also like to cook with olive oil and maybe for dinner you're going to do a vegetable stir fry or saute, or maybe you're going to pan sear some fish or chicken in a little bit of olive oil. So if you're thinking that you want to hit up to 4 tablespoons of olive oil in the day, well, maybe 1 tablespoon of olive oil will be the component of your salad dressing at your salad with lunch, and maybe then up to 2 or 3 tablespoons of olive oil can be used in your cooking with your dinner. And then you're going to be meeting your olive oil needs for the day. So the portion or the amount of olive oil you're eating at a given time will determine on both how often you're going to be eating that food in a day, and then how much you like to use in the preparation of that food. Now, for the other foods that should be eaten daily in the Mediterranean diet, we have fruit, which is recommended to be eaten 2 to 3 servings per day. So that could be fruit eaten twice or 3 times a day if you're eating a serving of fruit, which is about a half a cup to a cup of berries, or a medium piece of fruit like an apple, a pear, or an orange. Or that could be having 2 or 3 servings of fruit in one meal, like a fruit smoothie, if you want to just have all your fruit at once. So you have to decide how often you want to have fruit in your day to determine what the right portion of fruit is for you at that individual meal. Now, I know lots of people who eat way more fruit than just 2 or 3 servings a day, and it works really well for them. So you just have to decide what your personal needs are. But keep in mind that fruit is super healthy. It does have more sugar, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad for you. So again, it just depends on how much you're eating in your overall diet, and then you can work backwards to determine what is the right portion for you at your meal. And then for vegetables, the recommended amount is to have about 4 to 6 servings a day, which can be eaten in 2, 3, or just even one meal, depending on how many vegetables you like to eat at a time. So for example, if you're a salad eater like I am, and I like to have a really big salad, you can check out my video up here where I break down how I make one of these really big salads for myself. But you'll see in that video that I'd probably have about 3 cups of leafy greens and then at least 1 cup of other kinds of vegetables thrown in. And right there, you're gonna see that's about 4 servings of vegetables with just one meal. So my portion for that meal is a lot of servings of vegetables. You can kind of play with these numbers with yourself to determine how much you want. Maybe you don't wanna make a salad as the whole meal and you're gonna have a little bit of salad with a little bit of soup, or a sandwich and a salad. So that's going to, of course, play with the proportion of the amount of vegetables within a portion of that food for you. So if you're still with me here, you're starting to see how much you can play with your diet in order to decide what's the right portion for you. And then just to round off our discussion of daily foods in the Mediterranean diet, we have whole grains. These should be considered as a daily part of your diet if you want to follow the Mediterranean approach. Now, there is some room for debate here because some people say you don't have to get your whole grains just from grains. You can get this starchy component of your diet also from vegetables, and that's absolutely true. We have a lot of vegetables like potatoes, squash, peas, and corn, which are going to provide our body with a lot of healthy starch that can be the starch component of our diet instead of a grain, or it can be a bit of a mix of both. But the concept here is to have about 3 to 6 servings of whole grains or starchy vegetables per day. Now, instead, other foods are meant to be eaten weekly or considered on a weekly basis, and that's because they don't need to be included every single day in your overall diet. So these are things like fish. Fish is recommended to be eaten 2 to 3 times a week, or 2 to 3 servings a week, but you could instead have a larger portion of fish just once a week if you wanted to. Or you could even have a smaller portion of fish 4 to 5 times a week if you just love fish. So you can play around with these numbers. So then beans or legumes are recommended to be eaten around 3 servings per week, and nuts or seeds also about 3 servings per week. And what is a serving? Well, a serving of legumes is going to be about a half a cup cooked, whereas a serving of nuts or seeds is about a quarter cup of that food. And that's because nuts or seeds are so rich in healthy fats. And we know fats are very calorie dense for our body. So you don't need as much quantity to get a lot of nutrition. Now, when it comes to dietary recommendations according to the Mediterranean approach to eating, what foods did I not mention so far? Well, I didn't mention animal foods or products. So that could be meat like poultry or red meat, and even animal products like eggs or dairy. Now, these foods can be considered as part of a healthy diet, but they're considered on a less frequent basis. So you have to decide the amount that's right for you. In general, some people eat dairy just a couple of times a week. Other people consume it in really healthful amounts when it's a high protein variety, things like eggs or just egg whites or Greek yogurt. And these are really healthy foods for our body overall, and they don't necessarily need to be feared just because they're not recommended for a daily consumption. You can find a way to eat these foods every day if you want. And then we have poultry, which can be consumed a few times a week, and red meat less often. And here's how I like to think about red meat. It should be eaten as a treat a couple of times a week maximum, or even just once a week. And the way I control this for myself is that I like to go out to dinner with my husband about 1 or 2 times a week. And that's often when I'm going to order red meat for my meal. Instead, I really don't even buy it for cooking in my own house. And it's just a way that I can control the amount that I eat without having to think about it. But all that is to say, you need to find what works for you. Maybe you are somebody who absolutely does not want to eat legumes. You can't digest them. They make you feel horrible. I don't think you should force yourself to eat something that doesn't make you feel good, even if it's a healthy food. So this is where you can talk to your doctor, have a consultation with a dietitian, and really decide what the healthiest diet for you is. But now that you have a foundational concept of portion size and you just want to start digging into how much you should really eat at an individual meal for yourself, well, to figure that out, I have a great video for you up here where we go over all the things you need to answer in order to answer the big question, how much should I eat? Jump into that video and I'll see you in there.